Sadness and outrage tonight after another school shooting in America.
Good afternoon, this is News 2, and we're following a breaking story today, a shooting at a high school in Littleton, Colorado.
There's word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District.
2012 Colorado movie theater massacre.
7 bodies were discovered in Oklahoma.
Mosques in Christchurch were targeted, the country's worst mass shooting ever.
Hello everyone, this is the first part of a little Halloween series I'm trying out this year. I really hope you enjoy the series as it has taken a lot of extra time and effort out of my already busy schedule. I tried to make these videos as interesting and informative as I could, so I hope you like them. As a disclaimer, there was a huge lack of photos when it came to this case in particular, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sure everyone can relate to the feeling of having your Halloween candy taken away as a child. For many, depending on age, this could be a huge conflict between a child and their parents. Obviously, children can get irrationally angry over a small incident like this, and that's to be expected. But what no one would expect is a 55-year-old man to get so angry over missing candy that he would end up committing murder. On October 31st, 2011, at about 2:30 p.m., police responded to a 911 call that came from the 7100 block of South Winchester in Chicago, Illinois. The home belonged to a man named Ledell Peoples. Chicago police officer John Davidson recounted that Peoples was sitting on the porch when he showed up to the scene. According to Officer Davidson, Ledell seemed calm and coherent when he approached him. When he asked Ledell what was going on, Ledell responded, quote, "That's crazy. She threw a plate at my head." After speaking briefly with Peoples, Officer Davidson made his way inside of the home, where he observed paramedics tending to a wounded woman, who was identified as Maria Adams. She appeared to be unconscious, according to Officer Davidson. The scene was covered in blood, and Davidson also observed broken dishes on the ground and 3 knives in the kitchen sink. One of the 2 paramedics was Chicago Fire Department ambulance commander Michael Nolan. He later testified that he and his partner entered the home to find Maria face down and unresponsive in a pool of her own blood. Upon checking her pulse, they found it to be extremely weak. Nolan and his partner proceeded to turn her over, and when they did, they observed numerous actively bleeding lacerations and puncture wounds to her face, cheeks, and hands. Her blood pressure was very low, and she had sluggish eye response, which signaled to the paramedics that she may have suffered head trauma. Maria was rushed to John H. Stroger Jr. Hospital, where she was examined by Dr. Andrew Dennis, who was a trauma surgeon. Dr. Dennis later testified that when she arrived, Maria was unconscious, unable to breathe on her own, and also had significant blood loss. Maria had been stabbed over 20 times, and her many wounds indicated that her attacker had been holding a knife in each hand as they stabbed her. Not only did she suffer from several puncture wounds, but she also was found to have suffered blunt force trauma to her head, made apparent by the hematomas under her scalp. These injuries would be consistent with her head either being stomped on or slammed into the floor. Her hands also displayed many defensive wounds, cuts and gouges on the tops of her hands and fingers, suggesting she had her hands up during the attack. Ledell Peoples was arrested shortly after police arrived at his home earlier that day and was charged with attempted first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. After going in front of a judge, he was held on a bond of $2 million. Sadly, Maria's condition was too critical for the doctors to treat, and she ended up passing away a few days later on November 5th, 2011. She was only 49 years old at the time of her death. An autopsy was performed on Maria's body by Assistant Medical Examiner Dr. Ariel Goldschmidt. The external exam of her body revealed that she had suffered over 28 wounds across her body. 10 of them were stab wounds to her scalp, hands, and forearms, while 18 of them were wounds to her face. Multiple superficial wounds were also observed on her face, hands, and arms by Dr. Goldschmidt. He also confirmed what Dr. Dennis said, that Maria sustained hemorrhaging to the underside of her scalp, but he added that she also had hemorrhaging on her brain. Maria's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a cerebral edema and a brain defect due to the stab wounds, and Dr. Goldschmidt also listed her manner of death as homicide. Back to the house that Maria was found in, earlier on Halloween Day, Chicago firefighter and EMT Timothy Folliard stated that he and his partner treated Peoples for a minor laceration over his right eye. Let's talk about Ledell Peoples and Maria Adams's relationship for a moment. Multiple sources report their relationship a little differently, but most if not all note that they had known each other for years at this point. Some state that they were dating at the time of Maria's death, while some name them as mere acquaintances. At the end of the day, it's not extremely important to the story. Whatever their relationship was defined as, Maria would often stay the night at Peoples' home. There are also claims that Maria had been known to steal small items from the home, which is an important piece of information for this case. Sergeant Robert Garza later testified that when he walked into the home, he noticed the same 3 knives that Officer Davidson observed in the kitchen sink, and he also saw a large pool of blood in the kitchen. When he later spoke with Peoples at the hospital, Garza learned that Peoples had taken the time to get dressed before making the 911 call. Paul Shevlin, who worked as an assistant state's attorney, said that he spoke to Peoples at the police station on November 1st, 2011. He advised Peoples of his Miranda rights, and after, Peoples agreed to submit a written statement about the incident. According to court documents, the summary of his written statement goes as follows. At some point during that day, Peoples noticed that his bag of Halloween candy was missing, and he apparently remembered other times his belongings had gone missing when Maria stayed at his home. Peoples asked Maria about it, and she immediately denied taking the candy. Peoples then went looking, and apparently found it in her coat pocket, so he confronted her. An argument ensued, which led to Maria throwing a glass plate at Peoples' head, which hit him above the eye. Peoples claimed that he grew furious after this, and approached Maria while yelling, which prompted her to grab 2 steak knives. He says that he wrestled her to the ground at this point, slamming her hands multiple times, forcing both knives out of her grip. The 2 were still on the ground, and Peoples was still enraged. He was on top of Maria, and according to him, he wanted revenge. Peoples proceeded to pick up the knives and began to swing at her, reportedly aiming for her eyes. During this frenzy, he cut her head, arms, and hands. According to him, he stopped attacking her with the knives when she turned over and stopped fighting back. He then proceeded on to grab her hair, slamming her head into the floor 3 times. At this point, Maria was moaning in obvious pain, but apparently, Peoples didn't know if she was faking it or not. He stated that he grew angrier, thinking that the cut above his eye would turn into a permanent scar. Peoples stomped on Maria's back, as well as her head. In his statement, he admitted to then going to the drawer and pulling out the biggest knife, poking her with it as she lay motionless and face down on the ground. Shockingly, Peoples debated with himself about just putting Maria outside, but he reportedly realized that the attack would quickly be traced back to him, since they had sexual intercourse just an hour earlier. He was also worried that because they had sex, police would apparently get the wrong idea, as they might suspect that the attack was fueled by sexual motives. He decided against the idea of dumping her outside and took his time to go get dressed before he called 911. During his trial, Peoples offered a bit of background to the situation, stating that he was an ordained minister and said that he and Maria had a sexual relationship over the past several years. He told the court that it wasn't abnormal for Maria to stay the night, as she had been the day of her death. Court documents can be a little confusing, but as far as I can tell, during the trial, Peoples' story changed slightly. It began the same, that he had confronted Maria about the missing candy after finding it in her pocket. He also mentioned that she had thrown the plate hard at him, which left a gash above his eye. However, the events following were not exactly what he had written in his statement at the police station on November 1st. He said that after Maria threw the plate, she grabbed the knives in each hand and came at him. He apparently got a hold of her wrists, holding them in an attempt to prevent her from cutting him. He states that he asked her to let the knives go, but when she failed to comply with his request, a tussle ensued, where Peoples slammed her hands and she eventually dropped the knives. Peoples then claims that both he and Maria slipped in the blood presumably dripping from the cut above his eye, and Maria landed on the floor on her stomach. When Peoples fell, he said he scraped his knees, and when he saw his blood, his instinct to defend himself kicked back in. He said he swung the knives at her to keep her off of him. I'm not sure how she would be a threat to him at this point, especially because he said himself that she was laying on her stomach at this point. But anyway, according to Peoples, he had no intention of hurting Maria, let alone killing her. He stated that he did what he had to do to protect himself from her seriously injuring or killing him. He then said that he got up, leaving Maria to lay on the floor, but apparently she was still moving. Peoples claimed that she didn't look hurt, stating that he didn't see her wounds because of, quote, her hair and stuff. He also said that he did not notice any of her blood, saying that he only saw his own. This was right around the time that he went upstairs to get dressed before he dialed 911. When he was asked in court if he had indeed stomped on her head like his original statement claimed he did, he stated, quote, not actually as far as, doing it, but thought that he, quote, got her some, but it was just self-defense. He also said that he passed over her as she was still laying on her stomach, touching her on the back with his left foot briefly, when asked if he had stomped on her back. This recount of events is obviously quite different. I think it was a clear attempt to make the attack seem more justified and less brutal. Peoples was given an opportunity to read his original written statement during his trial. He apparently didn't remember saying that he slammed her head 3 times into the floor, and also claimed that he didn't recall talking about his thoughts on moving her body outside. The overall justification for the incident was that he was angry about the missing belongings, and about the fact that Maria had thrown a plate at him. Chicago Police Detective David Minnelli also testified in Peoples' trial. He stated that on the day of October 31st, 2011, he had spoken to Peoples after advising him of his Miranda rights, and claims that Peoples gave him a slightly different recount of the events of that Halloween day. The following is a quick summary of what Detective Minnelli claims Peoples told him. Peoples told Minnelli that he lunged at Maria after she threw the plate, and he slashed her multiple times with the knives in self-defense. He said he punched or pushed her head 1 or 2 times. When Maria stopped fighting back, he claimed he kicked her in the head because he thought she was, quote, faking being hurt. He then waited 5 or 10 minutes before calling the police. Minnelli also stated that Peoples thought about putting Maria's body outside, but decided against it because he knew it would be traced back to him. During closing arguments, both parties discussed whether Peoples' actions constituted first or second-degree murder. The evidence at trial was thoroughly looked through in order to find a fair verdict. Maria was stabbed over 20 times, most of which were inflicted while she lay still, completely unarmed. These wounds caused her to lose a huge amount of her blood before even reaching the hospital. The courts also found that he had stomped or slammed her head, causing major blunt force trauma. There's an argument to be had about imperfect self-defense, which is when a person honestly but unreasonably believes that they or someone close to them are in danger of great bodily injury or death, and kill another person because of that fear. In the case of Ledell Peoples and Maria Adams, imperfect self-defense could not be established. Even though he said he acted in self-defense, escalating the attack after she was motionless did not hold up well in his defense. It was also noted that Maria was the one with all of the defensive wounds, and Peoples had none. The jury ended up finding Peoples guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Peoples was subsequently sentenced to 30 years in prison, which his defense team argued constituted a life sentence due to his age. The judge ended up withholding the sentence, believing it to be appropriate. This was truly an absolutely insane case to read up on. It seems like something out of a book or movie. It's hard to imagine someone being so angry over a few pieces of candy to then murder someone that they had known for years. Even though I found little to no information on the type of person Maria was, she obviously didn't deserve to be killed in such a brutal way over something so minuscule. This is usually the part when I show the victims and take a moment for them, but seeing I have no photos, let's just take a moment of silence for Maria Adams. Thanks for sticking around for this short Halloween-themed video. I know there wasn't much of a story to listen to, but for what it lacks in length, it makes up for in craziness. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more interesting true crime content. Also, if you haven't already, please make sure to follow me on Twitter and TikTok. Both links will be in the description of this video. I can't wait to see you on the next one.